Adding an incident. An incident is the equivalent of Michigan's 362 report today. It is a screen where you will enter the information into. The incident screen has tabs across the top of it, and all of the tabs must be completed at the time that the incident is submitted to the state. We're going to go ahead and add the resident. It's the resident last name. You'll notice I entered Bill Doe. The system found a William Doe at the same facility with the same last name, date of birth, and gender. So I can make the decision as a worker whether Bill Doe is the same as William Doe, who had an incident in the past reported. If you think that it is the same person, you can highlight that row and click on OK, or you can click Cancel, and that will allow you to continue entering information on Bill. This area over here defaults to the facility address. If the resident is no longer at the facility, you can change this information. If the resident is deceased, you can enter the date of death here. Diagnosis. This is where you will enter the diagnosis as of the resident's last assessment. And I'm using my tab key to move around this screen. You can also use your mouse. Ambulatory status. These arrows at the end of the field indicates that it's a drop down. If you click on that arrow, it will open the drop down for you to be able to select the information from. Or once you learn what is in that field, you can just type and it will show up in the field. Once all of the information is entered into the required fields, you're going to click on the Save button. You'll get the information that the data was saved successfully, and you'll notice that the system automatically assigned a MIAX number and gave it a workflow status. The workflow status is important, as you'll learn in a later chapter, for the task list. The task list is going to keep you informed on things that you've started and have not completed. After I saved this resident, I now get Resident 2 icon. I can click on the Resident 2, and it gives me an additional screen that I can then add additional residents to. And again, notice these have drop downs. I can drop down and select the information from there, or I can type it in. After I click on Save, I'm given the option where I can remove or I can add a third. I'm going to go ahead and add a third for today because I want to show you how to remove and how to change the primary resident. Okay, I now have 3 residents. It saved each of the 3 residents. I now could add a 4th and add a 5th. You can add up to 5 residents per incident. The primary resident, who is the most harmed or most injured resident, is always resident number 1. If after you've entered all of the residents in the incident, you can't change once you've submitted this to the state, but before you've submitted your incident to the state, you can determine who is the most harmed. I'm going to say that Bill is resident 1, and I've decided Justin is more harmed and injured than Bill. So I'm going to go ahead and change my primary resident to number 2. The system tells me that if I have entered something already in the Details tab, that I may have to go back and change that because I would have answered it for the primary resident, and since I've changed primary residence, I may have to readdress the type of injury. You'll notice now that Justin is resident number 1. Bill, who was resident number 1, is now resident 2, and Susie is still resident 3. I'm going to remove resident 3 because Susie really is not involved with this incident. She was involved on the same day, but in a different incident. So we're going to remove Susie. The system asks me if I'm sure that I want to remove Susie from this incident. If I say yes, Susie has been removed from this incident, and I still have Justin and Bill. When everything is as I want it to be, I'm going to click on the Save button and move on to my Alleged Perpetrator tab. My Alleged Perpetrator tab does not have any required fields, so this is not a required tab. I do not have to have an alleged perpetrator for every incident. The incident summary provides information here at the top to provide a summary of the incident, what occurred, the location of the incident, names and titles of the involved staff members, and names and contact information of witnesses. So in this required notepad, this is where you're going to enter the information on the summary of the incident. Now this requires at least 50 characters, and many of you today, we are told, attach the information. If you type words like "see attached" or you enter less than 50 characters and you click on the Save button, you will receive an error message telling you that the entered summary must be greater than 50 characters and must not include the words like See Attached. It enters the error in red here so that I can quickly recover from it. I removed See Attached, I clicked on Save, and now it saves successfully. The Incident Detail tab is where you're going to enter the more detailed information about the incident. You're going to enter the type of incident, and when you open the drop-down, there are 16 types of incidents for you to select from. If you don't see what the incident was in this, you can select Other and provide additional information back in the Summary tab so that the state understands what happened with this incident. For the training, I'm going to select Fall. Type of injury or harm, I'm going to say it was a fracture. The resident's activity at the time of the incident, the resident was ambulating. The current location is at the facility. Now back on the resident tab, if I would have entered a date of death, this field would be disabled and you would not be able to put anything into it. But since I did not add a date of death, I'm going to go ahead and select Facility in that open field. Now the date and time the incident occurred are not required fields, but if you know that information, it's recommended that you enter it. And again, I could have selected the date from the calendar or just typed it in. And the next button is a questions button. This is a required field, and if I try to save the button before answering the questions, it tells me that I have an error here, need to answer questions. When I click on the questions button, the system performs an automated interview for you to respond in yes and no answers. So we'll just go through. In this first one, it asks if because of the fall, did the resident experience pain, harm, or mental anguish? Now we've already said the type of injury is a fracture, but just to show you, if I were to click no, the system would tell me that how I've responded to the automated interview indicates that it's not reportable under the incident type of fall. If you click OK, it returns you to this, and you can select a different type of incident and or a different type of harm. We're going to leave those as is, and we're going to come back to our questions. And we're going to answer no to all of these. At the end of the interview, we provide back to you the answers to your questions in statement form. You can read through that. If going through this process triggered some additional information that you forgot to add in that summary notepad, the tab before, you can enter that information here, and it will display back in that summary tab. Now here I can either click to restart, which erases your response and allows you to start over again. Same process. You're going to click on the questions button, go through the questions, and it will provide to you the statements here at the end. I'm going to save this. System tells me that it saved it. If I click back on my summary tab, you'll see that additional text that I just entered in the details tab is now showing up here. The submitted by tab. This is disabled. Everything is grayed out. You cannot enter anything here. The system will populate this for you at the time that you click the submit button. So the system keeps track of who at your facility submitted this incident to the state of Michigan. Attachment. You can attach files, pictures, to submit to the state. Once you do that, you have to upload the file, and it shows here. You can delete this file until you submit the incident to the state. Once you've submitted the incident to the state, it is a permanent document for the incident. If I click here, I want to open it to see what it is. You'll notice that arrow that came down. You're going to click here to open it, and there it is. If everything is as I want it to be, I'm going to click Save. Now you'll notice the Submit button enabled because I have entered all of the required data for this incident report, and it's now ready to be sent to the state of Michigan. If I'm not quite ready to submit it, I have everything done, but I don't have all of the samples that I need to attach, I'm going to go ahead and clear it. And again, my MIAX ID is 6, and the last name of my resident was Doe. I'm going to clear it. It's saved. I can come back to it, and I'll know that I have something to do by entering the task list. Now we're going to learn more about task list later in the training, but here are the people that I entered. I entered William, Jane, and Justin. Justin is my most recent MIAX ID. It tells me that this incident is in draft. It's going to stay here on my task list screen until I submit this to the state of Michigan. So I can never forget about it. It's here under the incident date. Once it's submitted, I'll have some information here, and it will also tell me when my investigation is due. I can click here in the row, and it will take me back to the incident. Only last time I was in Add Incident. Now that I've added it and it has the MIAX ID assigned, I need to do any updates or view it in the Update View screen function. So here it is. I'm going to go ahead, look over all of my tabs. If everything is as it should be, I click on Save again, and I submit it. When I click the Submit button, it gives me a confirmation statement that I have to check the checkbox and click OK. Both items have to be done before it is submitted to the state of Michigan. Now for this incident, if I type in the incident ID, or I could also type in the resident last name if I did not know the ID. Here it is. And you'll notice all of the fields are now disabled. I cannot change any of the data that was submitted. I can review the questions, but again, it does not give me the opportunity to restart or to save. I can only review it. And my attachment, the action delete, is gone now. This is a permanent attachment to this record. If we go and look at task list again, You'll notice my workflow status has changed from incident draft to incident submitted to SA. The date it was submitted was 3/20, and it tells me that my investigation report is due in 5 days on March 25th. If I go back to that incident, very quickly I'll show you that the Submitted By button is here. System automatically populated it that this person submitted the incident to the state of Michigan.